Full disclosure, friends. I thought I was gonna need like a moral hazmat suit or something when reading this book. And fair enough, right? It is that book about that topic, which if you bring up in a social situation, people just kind of grimace and shuffle sideways out of the room. Yeah, that's right. You guessed it. I mean, it's also the title of this video. Today we're talking about Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. So there is a lot of chatter online, offline, in general, unsurprisingly, about Lolita. There are also a lot of strong opinions being thrown about out there, especially on Reddit, unsurprisingly. So, I thought that maybe it'd be good if I actually read the book, go to source, so to speak, so that my opinions are, at the very least, grounded in some kind of reality. And you know what? Lolita is not what people say it is. Yes, it is about that, and it does have those bits in it, but oh my god, it is so much more weirder than anyone warns you. Also, way darker, and much sadder than I was expecting. Another thing that no one ever fucking mentions is how funny the writing is. Nabokov is a genius of prose. A genius of prose? Nabokov was a genius and his prose is stunning. Lolita was just, straight up, it was a pleasure to read, and Vladimir Nabokov is really a master of his craft. So yeah, welcome back to Reading for Idiots, the messiest corner of the literary world, where we welcome bad life choices as long as they lead to a good story. And today's no spoiler review is, of course, the dazzling, the controversial, the hilarious Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov.
Like, share, subscribe.
Since I already brought it up, let's begin with the prose, because Vladimir Nabokov wasn't just writing sentences. They were more like bejeweled death traps or something, because every paragraph felt like I was being mugged.
You getting mugged, kid!
By some guy in a really cool, fancy, velvet smoking jacket. I didn't even mind the subject matter was so horrific. I was just impressed, well done. That's so beautifully put. You mugged me, but nice jacket, bro. This man could have described a blocked drain and made it feel like a religious experience. In fact, he might have actually done that. There is a palpable rhythm to his words, right? And they just kind of bop along in your head, and his metaphors, God, because of course he had to rely heavily on metaphors. His metaphors were fresh, and like the sensory details that accompany every scene, they were ingeniously chosen. You could open this book on literally any page, pick a line, and have your let's do it right now. Pick a line at random, pick a passage at random, and you would have your eyebrows blown off. Okay? I have a surprise for you, she said, looking up at me with fond eyes over a spoonful of soup. In the fall, we too are going to England. Okay, maybe not that line. Yeah, okay. But you take my point, right? The writing also is not just pretty for the sake of being pretty. The style, oh my god, the style, which apparently Nabokov can just turn on like that. And now I have to read one of his other books because, how are they written? What's their style like? But anyway, the style. The way it's written, the way Lolita is written, is a reflection of the narrator's mind. By the way, the narrator, the protagonist, is called Humbert. but we'll get to that later when we talk about the humor. The style is a reflection of Humbert's mind. And if that doesn't make sense, just think of it like this. It's razzle-dazzle. It's ornate. It's like a male peacock that knows its feathers are beautiful. And so, is it self-justifying? Are we, the reader, supposed to be seduced? Maybe even seduced to the point of suspicion? And are we supposed to swoon at the beautiful writing that's a reflection of Humbert's mind? Are we supposed to swoon and then catch ourselves swooning? Like, why the fuck am I feeling like this when this book is so horrible? And then are we supposed to feel deeply uncomfortable about it? Like, is it intentional? I don't know. That's just how I felt, man. And I may have just revealed way too much about my own psychology, but Imho, in my humble opinion, Lolita works on so many different levels. And I've said this before. I love it when the writing of a book makes you experience the reality of the book. This is writing as moral complexity. It's absolutely ingenious. It is just brilliant. 2. The story. I'll be vague and brief, I hope. Lolita, at its dirty little rotten heart, is an examination. It is an autopsy of the guilty obsession. It examines what happens when your guilt cup, your cup of guilt, just overflows. Your guilt cup overflows because you've lost control of your obsession. I mean, we've all been there, right? To some extent, obviously not to that extent, but it looks like playing video games too long and missing a family dinner, or drinking way too much one night and having to call in sick for work the next day. You, the reader, get to see the protagonist, get to see the narrator, you get to see Humbert, that fucking name. You get to see Humbert ruin in slow motion his life because of his guilty obsession. And the thing is, remember, the narrator, the protagonist, Humbert, is telling you his story, right? The style is ornate. It's razzle-dazzle. Humbert is very charming. He is extremely witty, and he's like disarmingly self-deprecating, yet something keeps slipping up. And Humbert can't help himself. And a kind of ugly truth seeps through these beautifully chosen words. But the thing is, does Humbert realize this? Is this part of the ruse, or is this just that bejeweled death trap that Vladimir Nabokov has put together? Or even does Humbert know that he's fucked and he just doesn't want to admit it to himself? It's scary to think about, because this is one of the most complex and intricate portraits of self-destruction I've ever read. I couldn't even imagine something like this. That's why I love reading. It's genius. Reading Lolita, it felt like I was trapped inside Humbert, not just with the protagonist in that vaguely followed the protagonist along the storyline kind of way, but literally trapped inside Humbert, and it was suffocating in exactly the right way. Thirdly, the humor. I said this at the top, but nobody warned me how funny Lolita is. And it feels kind of wrong saying it just because it's a book about, but it is the pinnacle of dark comedy. Nabokov laces his narrative with absurdity, wit, irony. He jam-packs it with petty jokes, and he has these savage observations, often at American culture. Remember, he himself is a cultured European. he takes digs at institutions, at societies, just at general human pretensions. And it's so satisfying. Like, not only is it a pleasure to read because the prose is beautiful, blah, 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 but it's so satisfying, the humor. Like, there are whole scenes that play out like a Coen Brothers film, okay? And the thing is, Humbert is often the butt of the jokes, even if he doesn't really realize it himself, or maybe he's too arrogant to realize it. But he's also the narrator, right? Humbert, it's through his eyes that we see the world. They're essentially our eyes. So our judgments, our opinions, the jokes ultimately on us because we formed them, you know? It's our, oh, I'm better than thatness, that the light is shone on, you know? Lolita is a comedy of self-deception, a very bitter and a very sad kind of comedy that uncovers a hard-to-swallow truth about human nature and who we are. That tension, how is this book making me get all self-critical, making me examine myself when, like, I just don't want to, especially because of the subject matter. You know what I mean? Like, how does Nabokov do that? That tension, it arises so often that it's got to be a feature. Like, Nabokov knew exactly what he was doing with his writing. He surgically calibrated his writing to get that precise reaction from us. The fourth and fifth thing I want to talk about is the delicacy with which Lolita handles its subject matter and the darkness. You might expect Lolita to be lurid, graphic, explicit, exploitative. Let me tell you now, it really isn't. It is a tragedy in the classical Greek sense. The writing is always beautifully and remarkably restrained. You don't actually get an explicit scene, yet you know, like you really know exactly what is happening. And it's all through suggestion and implication.
Because of the implication.
We, the reader, are drip-fed just enough to make our stomach twist, and this is the kicker. We fill in the blanks ourselves. It's just something our mind does, right? The horrible picture of what the narrator is actually doing is completed by us.
You just blew my mind.
We're doing the completing, and we see the narrator, we see Humbert get eaten alive by his own obsession, his own guilt, his own self-delusion. And that is just horrifying because the mirror is turned around on us. We see Humbert self-destructing, and he knows he's self-destructing. He's obsessed, right? He can't help himself. It's a violence of omission where we're doing it to ourselves. Basically, we're doing it to ourselves. It is a violence of self-deception and self-gaslighting, and we see the cost of that reflected to us, of us, on the human soul in Humbert. It is so meta, and it's the restraint of the writing that makes the crushing inevitability of the whole thing that much more powerful because, look, he respects the intelligence of the reader. Like, you know what the book is about. You know what's going to happen. You know it's not going to end well. Lolita trusts you to pick up on the evil because the book doesn't wallow in it at all. As I said, it gives you just enough to make your stomach turn, and then we fill in the blanks. We are the ones who are considering what might be happening left unsaid off the page, those untold things. And it's not just that. It is also the things that might have actually happened, not just the things that Humbert said happened. Because what is he not telling us? That's the horror of this whole unreliable narrator thing. It's just frightening. All of these omissions with the mirror pointed at us. We're doing the heavy lifting and we're filling in the blanks. And the comedy, because it's about us now, is that much more sharper. The tragedy, that much more tragic and sad. And the prose more beautiful just because the prose is beautiful, right? And Nabokov does that. It's genius! So let's talk about this genius son of a bitch, Vladimir Nabokov himself, born 1899 in St. Petersburg, Russia, to a wealthy aristocratic family. And yes, he writes at least Lolita is written like he spent his childhood being tutored in 4 different languages by candlelight in a castle somewhere. And Vladimir Nabokov died in 1977 in Montreux, Switzerland. After the Russian Revolution, the Nabokov family understandably went into exile and they did the whole bouncing around Europe thing. They lived in Germany, England, France, and they eventually settled down in les États-Unis. America, fuck yeah! Basically collecting passports like their Pokemon cards. Vladimir Nabokov went to Cambridge University to read English literature. He started writing seriously in the 1920s, initially in Russian, but get this, he didn't start writing in English until he was in his 40s. English was probably not even his second or third language. He wrote Lolita while he was teaching at Cornell, and because of the subject matter, it was only published in Paris in 1955. Americans, for all their talk of freedom of speech, actually still are, rather conservative, and it only came out in the States 3 years later in 1958. His other notable works in English include Pinin, published in 1957. It is the story of an immigrant that is sad and funny in equal measure. Pale Fire, published in 1962. This is the Nabokov that I want to read next. And in 1969, Ada or Ardor was published. This is widely considered to be Nabokov on hard mode, a weird, sprawling, and brilliant book. So, final thoughts. Lolita is not what you think it is, Reddit. It is not smut. It is not controversy for controversy's sake, and it is not cheap shock value. Lolita is a work of literary genius. It fucks with you. It plays with you. It challenges you. It horrifies you. If you're honest enough with yourself to let it do this, Lolita will break your heart. It is also one of the funniest books I have ever read. It's definitely one of the darkest and one of the saddest. Lolita is hard to talk about, not just because of the obvious reasons. It's also very meta. The mirror is turned back on us. This review was difficult to write, difficult to record. Lolita's messy. Lolita's uncomfortable. Lolita is also very, very human. And Lolita is absolutely worth reading. So bring snacks, bring therapy, and if you've read it or are planning to, let's talk down below. Thanks for watching to the end. Like, share, subscribe, hit that bell. Does that feature still exist? If you like this kind of stuff, you know exactly what to do. New videos go up every Wednesday and live reading marathons go up every weekend. And that's it for today, folks. This has been Reading for Idiots. Hasta la vista, putas.
Like, share.